Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Zone Defense Podcast, and be sure to ring that bell to get post notifications. Also, drop a comment down below as well, and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. Today, Chris and I will be breaking down the NBA Conference Finals. How's it going, Chris?
It's going well, man. I'm really excited. I mean, I know we've been in football mode the last couple weeks here. Basketball is really it's still at the forefront for me. I've been watching a ton of basketball. Playoff basketball has been awesome. The bubble has been, I think it's been pretty much a smashing success so far. I'm just really excited to preview these games. We're getting closer and closer to the NBA Finals, which is always a great time to watch. And obviously, we're gonna do a video on breaking down that too, which will be a good time. So we're gonna figure out which teams of these two matchups are going to get in.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. The bubble has been a smashing success. We talked about it in our bubble preview episode, how we were both kind of concerned about how it was going to go, if someone contracted COVID, but if they were going to be able to raise awareness for social justice. But really, they've checked all those boxes. Everyone's healthy. They're able to raise awareness, and I think it's really been a success. The basketball on the court as well has been really, really entertaining, really, really good. And we got four really good teams, three of which it's kind of surprising a little bit that they're here at this point. And one, obviously, I think everyone predicted them to be here, especially when you got a guy like LeBron James. But yeah, let's just jump into it here. So first, we're going to break down the Eastern Conference, their second round matchups. Obviously, we had the Heat and the Bucks. We kind of talked about these a little bit in our last episode because they already had played two games beforehand. But the Heat defeated the Bucks 4-1. Kind of a big upset there. Giannis got hurt in games 4 and games 5. And then the other game, or other series, maybe one of the best series so far, maybe the second best series so far. And that was the 7-game series between the Raptors and the Celtics. Just really a defensive slugfest, really entertaining game. The OG Anunoby shot, tied 2-2, Boston up 3-2, the 2 double overtime game 6 to push it to game 7 for the Raptors, and then ultimately the Celtics won in just an absolute, very kind of hard to watch game 7 for sure. To some extent. Yes, at the same time, fun to watch because there wasn't a lot of scoring, but there was a lot of defense, a lot of just laying it all out there. And every time you thought the Raptors were out of it, they were right back in it. So what were your biggest takeaways from those two series?
I'm obviously going to start with the Raptors-Celtics series. And I think this is a concern that I'm sure I'm going to address later, but the Celtics look absolutely gassed. And both the Celtics and the Raptors, they both looked absolutely gassed in those last couple of games. That's why we saw such a great defensive battle, because the offense is really struggling. The teams start to get fatigued. But this series could have been over a lot faster, and I'd feel a lot better about the Celtics going into the next series. Not saying they can't get it done, but I'd feel a lot better if they had got it done in 5-6 games. But OG Anunoby with an absolutely incredible shot, and I think he saved them from a possible sweep even. I think if the Celtics would have gone up 3-0, I think the series would have been, obviously, no one's come back, but I think the series would have been over right there pretty much. And the Celtics have a lot more time to rest. But going into this Miami Heat series, you got to try to stop the Miami Heat from just absolutely clamping up everything you do, which is what the Heat have done so far in the playoffs. Against the Bucks, they looked unbelievable. They looked like the much better team. And Giannis got hurt the last couple games, but games 1 through 3, I didn't think he played very well. Game 4 before his injury, he was awesome. And then Chris Middleton kind of picked it up, and they were able to sneak the one game from a sweep at least, and the Heat took over again in game 5 and were able to get the series done. But this is gonna be a really good series. A takeaway for the Heat would just be they're the hottest team in basketball right now, and they're gonna be a tough team to eliminate in the next round.
Yeah, I want to go back to your point there that you made about the Raptors and how the Celtics should have finished that series off a lot quicker. I would argue. I thought Game 2, when Marcus Smart just absolutely lost his mind, hit a bunch of threes, I thought Toronto outplayed them that game, and then they also outplayed them in Game 4 when they won. It was like a 6-7 point win, but they won kind of convincingly. Every other game, though, I thought Boston was the clear-cut number one better team, both offensively and even to some extent defensively, although Toronto was really good defensively despite their offensive woes. And even Game 7. Game 7, you look at all the stats outside of like free throws, Boston just dominated Toronto, and somehow, some way, I think just maybe the never underestimate the heart of a champion. Somewhat way, the Raptors found a way to be in that game, and it really came down there to that tying 3 that Fred VanVleet just I don't know what that was. It was pretty gross. But
Oof.
sticking with Toronto, though, I thought Van Vliet kind of turned it on a little bit towards the end of the series. He outside of that awful shot, he had a decent game 7.
Yeah, he did.
Kyle Lowry is obviously was pretty good there. I felt like throughout the series, he had a monster game 6 to help him get to game 7. However, outside of that, Van Vliet was struggled mightily for the first half of the series. Pascal Siakam was
Oof.
absolutely awful for the entire playoffs,
Yeah,
including
he
their
sure
games against
was.
the Nets. Serge Ibaka was okay off the bench. Norm Powell turned it on there down the stretch. Marc Gasol looked really old, did not look good. Are you like, obviously I think Siakam's probably the guy you're most concerned about, but like, where do you think this Raptors team goes moving forward?
I mean, we've kind of talked about this, me and you, just kind of off the record a little bit with what we think the Raptors can be, and if they can't bring in another superstar, which with their cap space, and they're going to have to pay Siakam this next season as well. I don't think they're going to bring in another superstar, and this playoff run just absolutely showed me that Siakam cannot be a number one option for a team. He really can't. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. One of the better players in our league, and a star for sure. A player that I enjoy watching a lot, but without Kawhi Leonard, this just doesn't have that go-to guy that they can rely on in crunch time. And Siakam was downright pitiful. I mean, he was all right in the Nets series, which, I mean, is expected. I mean, it's the Nets. And he still wasn't even that special in that series. He had a couple games.
Yeah.
But against Boston, I mean, only one game over 20 points, only one game over 50% from the floor. That's not going to get it done if you're the best player on a team. That's not going to get it.
Yeah. And he was playing okay defensively, but even in game 7, you could tell that the offensive woes were just really getting to him on that end as well. He was missing layups. He was missing wide open shots. He was pretty non-existent from 3, like you mentioned. And he really, I mean, this kind of dates back. I know he got off to a really good start, and I kind of talked about this in the bubble preview episode. He got off to an amazing start to the year. Obviously, rode that momentum to the All-Star game, first-time All-Star. But then kind of after the beginning part of the season, he really kind of dropped off a cliff, but I kind of just didn't really go noticed because Toronto was still winning games. And then the bubble and the 8-game lead-ups, all the way up until now with the playoff series that he played in, he was just awful. And he really kind of showed that he needs to add something to his game or just get another star. Because I think, as we saw last year, obviously the Raptors won the championship, and he was like the number 2, sometimes number 3 option, but behind Kawhi and Lowry. If you can get into a situation like that again, I think Siakam could be a really good tool for a championship team because he's already done it before. But all those people saying, "Oh, Siakam's number 1," I think they're wrong, quite frankly. And I think if they don't go out and get another guy, I think Toronto could be in a very similar spot, if not a worse spot, come next season.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. Where do you think the other team that got eliminated in the East? Where do you think the Bucks go next? Do you think they build around Giannis again? Do you think they pay him? Do you think they trade him? What do you think is going to happen this offseason and going into next year for the Bucks?
Well, for me, I think they need to get a new coach. I mean, if you look at the contract situation, for the most part, they're kind of locked in with this team for next year, and the big thing they can change is the coach, Mike Budenholzer.
They've already kind of proclaimed that he's going to be around next year again.
Yeah, and they just should. I saw that too, and I just think they need to get a new coach in there, because if not, they're going to be the same team they were last year, unless he learned something. But I mean, it happened with Atlanta several times. It's happened with Milwaukee 2 years in a row. He is a great regular season coach, can coach his guys up, has a huge rotation, all of that, and then they get to the playoffs. We need to make adjustments. We saw Nick Nurse make adjustments constantly for Toronto. Brad Stevens with Boston, same thing. Spoelstra with Miami. List goes on and on. And but Coach Bud, for some reason, just cannot do that, where he's got his guys and they play a huge rotation, and for some reason he just refuses to play his guys a ton of minutes. And then he kind of started doing that down the stretch when things started to get kind of a little tense there, when it looked like they were going to lose the series. And honestly, Giannis just didn't take over. He didn't take over. Middleton, of course, had that huge game 4, is the reason they won that game. But outside of that, didn't look great. Eric Bledsoe continues to disappoint. George Hill, I thought, was one of their best offensive options, and that's not set up for success. So I think Coach Bud, I think they need to do an improvement there. And I don't know if they want to keep him, as you said, they're probably going to do. He's got to learn how to adjust and how to be a playoff coach if they want to find a championship, because like I said, he's been doing this now. I think it was 2014, 2015 was when I almost said the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Hawks won 60 some games, were the first seed in the East, and the same thing happened when they ran to the Cleveland LeBron guys. They just couldn't do anything. And same thing happened here these past 2 years. Last year, Milwaukee versus Toronto. This year against Miami. So I know everyone's like, hey, Giannis is going to get traded. I talked a while there already. Do you think Giannis is going to get traded before I kind of express my thoughts on that?
No, I don't believe he's going to get traded. I think he's going to play one more year here, and then he's going to test free agency and go somewhere else. I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think they're going to get knocked out of the play. They're going to get bounced fairly early in the playoffs. Maybe get to the Eastern Conference Finals again next year, and then not get it done. Because if Coach Bud's still there, that's basically the same roster, which is most likely going to be. Maybe they bring in some another talented piece, which could get them over the edge. But
Chris Paul.
I've seen that rumor, but I've also seen that it's probably not likely to happen. I think they go after a little bit lower end of a solid guard like a Drew Holiday, who's a very good player and could help them out. But who knows if that really gets them over the top. So kind of for me, I think Giannis is going to be around for next year. I do not believe they will trade him. I think they're going to give it one more go and not win again next year, and then that's when they blow it up.
I mean, I think the roadmap is there for them to win. I think we picked them to make the final. As a lot of people picked them to win the championship because they were on pace to win like 70 games for much of this year. But at the same time, I mean, Giannis, I don't know. He didn't look like a number one option there. I'll be honest. I know he's going to win back-to-back MVPs, but he wasn't. He didn't look as great defensively. He didn't look as great offensively. He kind of just turned the ball over, loved to complain, loved to look at the refs when he wasn't getting the calls, and he did not impress me at all. So I know there's a whole like, oh, he's a Scottie Pippen. He's the Pippen. He needs his Jordan. But like I'm not going to go that far. I think he could be more of like a Paul George type of guy where he's like an A2 guy to an A1. Like he needs a second star. And as good as Chris Middleton is, I know he proved me wrong. I hate Chris Middleton. I'm not hating personally, but I hate how much hype he gets, how great people think he is. He really shut me up though. He played really well there in Game 4. At the same time though, he's a third option on a good team. He's not a number 2. So maybe I know Drew Holiday too has also been in talks. Maybe they bring him in, but I think he's going to be in Milwaukee for his entire career. I think he's going to be like a Dame Lillard guy. I think because he came over from Greece, he's very familiar with the Milwaukee area. He seems loyal to that franchise. So
possible.
I don't think he gets traded.
He's going to get a big payday no matter what. I say it's time to jump into the kind of previewing this matchup. Yeah, it's going to be an absolute. This is honestly a very similar matchup to the Celtics Raptors. I think both teams are very evenly matched, have a lot of similar strengths. I mean, we already saw in Game 1, Miami was able to edge out a narrow victory, which was a fantastic game, and Bam Adebayo made one of the absolute best plays in playoff basketball history for me. That was an unbelievable defensive play on the block of Jason Tatum. I thought Jason Tatum had a free rim run and was going to slam that home for the winning Game 1. Bam. He just stomped out Celtics fans' dreams. But kind of touch up on Game 1 and what you expect going forward in the series.
Yeah, so I had Miami. I think this is going to go 7 games regardless, and I had Miami winning in 7.
Me as well in 7. Yeah, I agree.
Just because I thought, like you mentioned earlier, I thought Boston looked really gassed against Toronto. They got a little bit of a break. They obviously have the talent. But I think Miami, their defense is crazy, and their offense is good. And then, as we saw there in Game 1, when it gets kind of crunch time, you just give it to Jimmy Butler and get out of the way. I mean, he hit that crazy 3 that could have been the game winner, but then the Marcus Smart drew an offensive foul and then got a technical free throw to kind of tie it up. But I mean, but then Jason Tatum, he clanked that 3 off the rim that could have won the game for Boston regulation. So I think that kind of shows the difference between Tatum. I think he missed a clutch shot 2 against Toronto in the Toronto series a couple times as well. I think it was in Game 6. So I think that shows how Jimmy Butler is a little bit, I don't want to say a better player than Jason Tatum, but a better maybe clutch performer, maybe better playoff performer, better equipped to kind of carry his team down the stretch. Yeah, and I think but that Bam Adebayo block, that was one of the best plays in the game, like you said, I've ever seen. I mean, I was watching that game live and I just was like in shock because and then you see some of these pictures too where it's just like That's insane. Like it looks
Yeah.
like Tatum's gonna put him on a poster, and Bam just said no. Like that's just nuts.
Yeah. This is a little bit off
Um,
topic. At what point does Bam Adebayo become the best center in the NBA? Because he's starting to enter that discussion for you. I'm not kidding. I think he might. He's starting to really enter the discussion. I think he's in that group of elite centers now at this point.
yeah, I think he's there. I mean, there's not given today's like how it's small ball and there's not like the Rockets don't even have a center on their team right now. I think it's not as stiff a competition when it comes to the
Yeah.
elite centers,
Oh
but
yeah.
he's definitely there. I mean, he was an all-star this year. I think he gets a lot of credit for his defense for good reason, like we saw with that block. But he's also a good offensive option when they need him to score some points. So I think he's definitely in that conversation, and he's Miami. I think both these teams have been the best in the bubble consistently, as I mentioned in our
Yeah.
previous NBA episode. And I think they're well deserving of the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's why it's going to be such an amazing series.
Yeah, on Bam really quick, he's also a fantastic passer. He averages over 5 assists a game, which I mean, 16, 10, and 5. That's some incredible numbers from an as well as being, in my opinion, maybe besides Gobert, the best defensive center in the league, even though he's only 6'9", so he can kind of play a little bit. He's a little bit more mobile than some of the other centers than me. He's not as big of a he doesn't have as big of a usage percentage as a guy like Karl Anthony Towns or Joel Embiid. He's starting to enter he's starting to rise up to the number 2 spot after Jokic for me, center. Might be a little bit too much. The way he's performed in the playoffs, I mean, I know Jimmy Butler gets all the credit for the fourth quarter, which is well deserved. Bam Adebayo's been right there too. He's been almost just as clutch on both ends of the floor. He's had some big dunks. I believe he had a big finish in one of the games in the Raptors series that they really needed him to. And I mean, he was instrumental in their game 1 victory. Another player I want to talk about on the Heat is Goran Dragic. He's been kind of lights out in the so far in the multiple, especially against Indiana, and then the beginning of the Milwaukee series. He was scoring 20 points every game, and then I mean he kind of cooled off a little bit at the end of the Milwaukee series, but back to it against Boston with a 29-point performance to lead the Heat charge, and he's been instrumental since they reinserted him into the starting lineup going into the bubble. He was coming off the bench for the roles have kind of flipped, and I think. Honestly, he doesn't get enough credit for the fact that they've really, really turned it up in the playoffs.
I mean, they have a good game plan. You have Crowder, Adebayo, Dragic, Duncan Robinson,
Tyler
little Kelly Olynyk here and there, Tyler Hero off the bench.
Who's been
You have them
playoffs as well.
Yeah, you have them carry the team for the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth, you just say, "Here, Jimmy." Because if you look at his stats, like before the fourth quarter, I mean, he doesn't do a ton. They just save him basically, and then he just goes off. And I didn't even mention there in overtime, he had the and one shot that basically sealed the game for them, along with that block. So they found something that works. Spoelstra's a really good coach. I feel like we've talked enough about Miami though. Let's talk about Boston a little bit. Obviously, Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be really good. I think the difference, whether or not they win this series, is Kemba Walker can show up. We talked about it when we were talking about the Toronto series. He looked really good against Philadelphia, and then he also looked really good at the beginning of the Toronto series. But then he really cooled off a little bit. He made clutch shots down the set, but he didn't perform as well. And they were even to the point where they were kind of just done. They weren't guarding him as hard as they were because they had to pay attention to the other guys. So, you think Kemba's the X factor, and what are you kind of expecting from him in this series?
While Kemba is the X factor for sure, he needs to start showing up a little bit more. I think the X factor to their success has been Marcus Smart. Man, he's had some absolutely.
That's true. Yeah, he's been really good.
I mean, he said over the last, I believe it's the last 8 or 9 games, he's had 3 over 20 points and another game with 19 as well. I mean, he's been shooting the ball extremely well from beyond the arc. He's had multiple games where he made 6 3-pointers and another game he had 5. So, I mean, this is a guy that has played probably the best basketball of his career inside the bubble. I mean, he had 26 points in game 1. He was, I would argue, their best offensive player in game 1. I know Tatum had 30 points, but he also took more shots than Smart, and also Smart knocked down 6 triples from beyond the arc. And Smart also adds he's going to give you his best. He's one of your best defenders on any given team in this league. He's one of the better defenders at the guard position. So if the offense is there for Smart, this could be a series that Boston can definitely win. Because obviously Tatum's going to get his, Jaylen Brown's going to get his, Kemba, we already said it. Yeah, more of the X factor, and then Smart is. I think he's really been the key to their success in the playoffs. He's been excellent when they've needed him.
he had that monster block on Norman
Yes, he
Powell
did.
too in Game 7
Absolutely.
that kind of sealed their Game 7 win as well. I feel like that one kind of gets overlooked now just because of how great the Bam one was, though. The real concern for the Celtics, and which is really why I ultimately chose the Heat to win this series, is because of, I mean, Daniel Tice, their starting center, the Grant and Robert Williams. I know they've looked good as well. But I think Bam is clearly better than them, and I think it's going to be difficult for them to kind of stop him if he wants to get going. So ultimately, although I think Boston has more top end talent, I think Miami is just a deeper roster. And I feel like defensively, I think Bam is really the big reason why I think Miami's going to win the series, because I don't really think Boston really has an answer for him, and I think Miami has enough to slow down the Boston guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I'm gonna go into my prediction. I'm gonna take Heat in 7. I really think the Celtics needed that Game 1 victory, especially with the fatigue they've been dealing with. They did look absolutely dead. I mean, they were playing 50 minutes a game for some of those bigger couple overtime, especially Game 6 and the double overtime performance. I mean, Kemba Walker had 51 minutes in that game, so and didn't play very well in that game. By the way, he had only had 5 points, but this is definitely I think this game too becomes an absolute must win for the Celtics. I think if they get down 2-0, with the Heat, the way the Heat have been, pun intended, scorching, I think it's gonna Boston's in some trouble if they lose in game 2.
Yeah, and you could tell. I mean, you could tell in Game 7 for both teams, and you could tell in Game 1 a lot of shots are coming up short, and that's just because they're tired. That's what happens when you're tired. And the fact that Game 1 went into overtime, I think definitely bodes better for the Heat for sure, because I think they had kind of a decent break there after the Milwaukee series, and Boston's just going right back at it. They only had a few days off, so yeah, I think ultimately the Celtics are gonna. I think they're gonna win Game 2. I'm gonna be honest. I think they're gonna win Game 2. They almost won Game 1. And I think it's going to be a really tight series, but ultimately Miami emerges victorious and makes it to the finals for the first time without LeBron, right? That was 2014, I think, when the Heatles, excuse me, were with the Heat. So definitely going to be a really good series, really entertaining. But let's jump into the Western Conference. We're not going to spend too much time on one series just because I don't really care about it too much. To be honest, that's Lakers-Rockets. I had the Lakers winning, or I had Lakers in 6. I think you had a Lakers sweep in the Lakers 1-5, so kind of in between. Honestly, though, if you look at a lot of experts, this was exactly by the book as a series could get, because many people thought LeBron loves to have kind of that feel out Game 1, see what's going on. They don't always perform as well. We saw with Portland. Yep. Same thing happened with Houston. Houston stole Game 1, and then Lakers just dominated the rest of the series. I mean, Games 2 and 3 I thought were reasonably close, but like Game 4 and 5, the Rockets just laid an egg. They just didn't even care. Do you have any kind of thoughts, anything to add? Obviously, we'll get into the Lakers in more depth when we talk about the conference finals, but anything to add about the Rockets, maybe where they go from here?
Yeah, I mean, really, what is there? I mean, D'Antoni's gone. Maybe that sparks something for them, but I really just don't think this roster is equipped to win an NBA final. I mean, maybe they can make some noise in the playoffs. I believe they made some noise this year. I mean, they were able to take down the Thunder, and then after Game 1, I mean, some people were saying, "Wow, Rockets might win this series," and then LeBron just went absolutely crazy, like he did. Like you said before, I was about to bring it up with Portland. Game 1. They looked kind of rough. After that, they just took over the series. And unfortunately, I mean, I am wearing my Blazers hoodie right now, but not proudly after that performance. But yeah, Lakers, I mean, they look good. What else is there to say? It's just the X factor, which we'll talk about more into depth, is going to be whatever. They need someone to step up as a third option. And I mean, AD and LeBron, awesome players. They've been practically unguardable in the playoffs. They need another option. I mean, whether it's one guy or a collection of guys in different games, they need someone to step up as a third option. They're going to be very tough to beat and may just win the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. From what I could see, it seemed like, I mean, the Rockets were kind of there in Game 2. They were kind of there in Game 3. And when they lost those games, they were just kind of like, yeah, I'm done with the bubble. And then, I mean, Game 4, they only lost by 10, but really, I mean, they kind of just scored some garbage time points. And same thing with Game 5. They weren't really in that game. And they kind of went on a run to make it look respectable. But I think D'Antoni, like they didn't even land after they left Orlando in the plane. He was like, "Yeah, I'm leaving. Bye, guys." And then shortly thereafter it was announced he wasn't coming back. And right. I think he's a good coach, and I think he's one of, especially for what they want to do with the small ball, the fast lineup, shoot a bunch of threes. I think D'Antoni is the perfect coach for that. And if they can't do it with him, They're not going to be able to do it with anybody. And I know you mentioned it there. They had a decent playoff because they beat the Thunder in round one. But think back. I know it's forever ago. It feels like entire lifetime ago. But think about last summer when they got Russell Westbrook in 2019 before this season. And if you would have told them, hey, so you're doing this trade, you're going to have a bunch of picks, and what you're going to get is you're going to beat the Thunder in a game 7 that you almost lost and then get smacked by the Lakers in the second round. And that's what this trade is going to get you. I don't think they'd be very happy about that. And looking at this team going forward, I think this is like their ceiling. I don't think they're. And this is what their ceiling's been with the entire time they have had James Harden. I mean, it's like they sneak into a conference finals every now and then, but they're most likely going to be a second round exit. It'd be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. But I think with Westbrook and Harden, that's what's going to be here. That's how the team's going to play. But before we jump into the series, I really want to talk about, I think everybody wants to talk about, I want to hear your thoughts on the whole Danuel House situation where he snuck somebody into his room that wasn't supposed to be there in the bubble. Apparently it was a female, and they participated in some recreational activities by all reports for a few hours and then left. And of course, he eventually got caught. There were some cameras. And then eventually, I think he missed, I think it was game 3, game 4, game 5. Originally, it was with some another COVID testing official there. But then it was just he snuck someone to his room, got caught. What are your thoughts about this kind of situation? A lot of people thought it might happen, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part in the bubble, at least, players have been pretty smart about their decisions off the court, I would say. But Danuel House was not, and there's been even some rumors going around that maybe LeBron snitched on him or something. But I mean, that's just a hypothetical. Obviously, no, not reporting it could be, but that's just a couple of hypothetical things. But on House, yeah, I mean, it's a boneheaded move. I mean, I get it. You're there for a while. Things happen, but you can't be just a thing you can't be doing when your team absolutely needs you. And he was a decent role player for them as well. So
he was a big part of their team. Yeah,
I felt like he was a big reason why they had some success. He was a good two-way option for them on a pretty affordable contract. But I guess we'll see now. Not really much else to add to that. I think it was a boneheaded play. Obviously, he knows that, but I don't think it would have mattered in the series outcome. Hopefully, we don't see more.
There's also a rumor, though. You said it right there. Hopefully, there's not more of it. There's a rumor actually that he might have been like the fall guy, and that this is like something that's been happening more frequently than has been reported, and he's maybe not the only guy. So I don't know, but that'll be interesting to see if something comes out later on. But I mean, I get maybe he's just like, yeah, we're gonna lose the Lakers anyway. But it was still earlier in the series, and you can't just give up on your team like that. I mean, he was a big part of their team, so. I don't think he's not going to be out of the league. He's still a good player. It's just going to be something that we all kind of look back and laugh on. He's going to be that guy that did that thing in the bubble. That's how Danuel House is going to be remembered, unless he becomes like an absolute beast in the league, but I don't really think is highly likely. He's still a solid role player though. But let's jump into the thing that I've been most looking forward to talking about, and that is the Denver Nuggets somehow beating the Los Angeles Clippers in a 7-game series. And I'm going to say it right here. I think this is one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. I know it was just a 2-3 series. We saw the same thing happen in the East, actually, the 3 seed upset the 2 seed. But the talent discrepancy between the Raptors and the Celtics was basically nothing, right? It was as slim as it could be for the 2 and 3 seed. Exact opposite with the Clippers and the Nuggets. I mean, we picked it on this show. I think you might have had Clippers in 5. I think I had Clippers in 6. Maybe we both had Clippers in 6. I don't remember exactly. But everybody was picking the Clippers to win, and they had so much more talent on paper. They were supposed to be the NBA champion since the preseason, and then mix that in with the fact they were up 3-1, and mix that in with the fact that they were destroying them in both games 5 and game 6, and had a double-digit lead in game 7, and they choked it all the way. I mean, just mix in all of that. I mean, go on Twitter, every NBA expert, myself, I'm not an NBA expert, but I actually turned the game off in both game 5 and game 6, got an alert. It was like it was deja vu. Got an alert on my phone saying, Nuggets, storm back. Didn't this just happen? And it happened again. It was one of the craziest, as I said, biggest upset series ever, in my opinion. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, basically, the Nuggets snatched victory from the jaws of defeat 3 different times in 3 different games. 3-1 in basically dominating fashion. I thought the Clippers looked, honestly, they looked pretty good in the first 4 games of the series. I thought they looked like they were primed to win the NBA Finals. I thought they were the best team left. But after that, I don't know what happened, but they did basically the same thing the Jazz did. Just absolutely fell apart in Game 5, and that was the big turning point. That double-digit lead that they blew was the big turning point. And obviously, the main headline on all this that we didn't even really talk about yet, Jamal Murray's Game 7. I mean, this man has proved both me and Drew wrong. We both had him pretty high on our most overrated players list a couple months ago. You check that. I see some of those opinions change. You don't have to stay water, I guess, with an opinion like that if the player just absolutely erupts in the bubble, which has been the case for Jamal Murray. I was absolutely wrong on this guy. He's kicked into a different level. Obviously, he's still a very streaky scorer. He's had some games where he's disappeared, but you can live with that when he's putting up 40 bombs a game. And he said that's what the 4th or 5th time he's done it in the bubble so far. That's just absolutely incredible. And I thought he struggled a little bit in this series as well. There was a lot of games
He scored a lot.
did not shoot well, but when you show up like that for a Game 7, I don't care about the first 6 games of the series, no matter what you do. You get that Game 7 performance in, you basically win the game by yourself. You have my respect, and so way to go, Jamal Murray. I mean, that's an absolutely incredible performance. One of the best performances in playoff history, in my opinion. The 40-point game for him in Game 7, really solidifying that upset, and they blew him out in Game 7. Ended up just absolutely running away with that game in the fourth quarter. And a stat that, I mean, I know you remember the 0 for 27 Houston Rockets 3-point percentage in Game 7 of the Warriors series, but we're not going to forget the 0 for 11 shooting by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the fourth quarter. I mean, that
they didn't score until like 5 minutes left in the game. Like what?
It was rough, man. I mean, neither one of them hit a single shot in the fourth quarter. That's absolutely mind-boggling and incredible. And it's great for I mean, I did like the Clippers a little bit more as a team in terms of fandom, but I love upsets. I have to side with the Nuggets now. Not really a big Nuggets fan, but like, come on, you gotta love it.
Yeah, I got some takes on the Clippers. We'll get to those in a second. But real quick on the Nuggets, you mentioned Jamal Murray. Obviously, he gets all the headlines because of how good he was. He was pretty good there in Game 6, really good in Game 7. But if you look at the whole series, Nikola Jokic, he was just, I mean, he had the most dominating 16-point performance, I think, in NBA history in Game 7 because he had a triple-double. He was making crazy passes. I think he had 22 rebounds, was really good there. Paul Millsap, I think he's one of the reasons they won this series because you go back to Game 5 when they were about to lose and everyone kind of just quit. He had a really good third quarter, apparently motivated them and carried them to that victory. And that kind of set up things for how they won both Game 6 and Game 7. So he played really well. Michael Porter Jr. made some clutch shots, was not as great offensively as you would like.
Made some headlines,
however,
too.
Yes. For both good and bad reasons. And but I thought he played a lot better defensively. I thought he was bringing down a lot of rebounds. I mocked him on this show last NBA episode that we did because of how bad he was defensively. But I thought he improved a lot. And this is a team we'll get into it in a second. There, I like them. I like them a lot. I think they're a lot of fun to watch. I think they had the capabilities to make things interesting against the Lakers. I know a lot of people are upset because it's not the Battle of LA we were promised since last October. But at the same time, I think it's gonna be entertaining conference finals. But let's jump into the Clippers here. What are your thoughts? I have some thoughts. What are your thoughts on this Clippers team that went from? I mean, are they the biggest, most disappointing team since like the Lakers when they got Kobe and Steve Nash and just sucked? I mean, this is a team that was supposed to win the finals. They've been telling us all year that they were going to win the finals. What do you think about this?
Yeah, man. I mean, now you look at a guy like Paul George going out interviewing saying, "Yeah, we didn't need to win the finals this year." Are you kidding me, dude? This team was predicted. I mean, everyone thought you were a shoo-in to win it all this year, including myself. I mean, I think you'd have been kind of crazy not to think this was a team that at least could get to the finals with no problems, even over a team like LeBron and AD and the Lakers. But, I mean, a deep roster, and I honestly can't explain it. I don't know how this team is the most talent. I think they have the most talented roster in the entire NBA. I mean, you look at a guy like Kawhi, who was absolutely horrendous in Game 7. I mean, you can't.
This was the worst playoff series I think I've seen Kawhi play.
Yeah, he was bad, and
he had some other games that weren't good,
especially down the stretch when they were losing. I mean, obviously it makes sense. They were dropping games, and he wasn't playing as well. But I mean, Kawhi he at least has the established legacy of him being an awesome Finals performer to like
Yeah.
I'm willing to give him this free pass if as long as he can really go off next year in the playoffs. He needs to regain that form he's had with the Raptors and both the Raptors and the Spurs. But the guy I'm not willing to forget is Paul George. Man, he was downright pathetic in the playoffs. I know he had a couple bigger games in early in the Nuggets, but then kind of fell apart again in Game 7.
Pathetic P.
Even worse than Kawhi Leonard in that game. I mean, the dude was what 2 for 12 from beyond the arc, something like that. An absolutely pitiful performance from both of them in Game 7. But Paul George is the guy that I've quickly just I went from him being one of my favorite players in the league a couple years ago to absolutely despising him. This guy can't show up in the playoffs. All he does is talk, and he's a player that he chases championships and doesn't get the job done, and then makes excuses for it. I'm sick of him, man. I went from being a big fan to him being one of my least favorite players in the league very quickly.
Yeah, when I heard that quote from Paul George about how it wasn't quote championship or bust this year, whatever he said, that really kind of showed me what Paul George is going to be for Halloween this year, and that's going to be a clown. That's what Paul George is. He's an absolute clown. Because like you said, he was decent to some extent in some of the games, and he had like a 35-point game there. But like, what are you doing, dude? Like he just consistently he doesn't stop talking. He never lives it up. He was off. He was all. I mean, he had that 1-3 that he had a bunch of wide open threes that were just misses. He hit that one ball that was off the backboard. Like, what are you doing? And I think he just thinks he is so great all the time. And there's always an excuse. And it's like, I know he was dealing with some stuff in the bubble. So I kind of give him a little bit of a break. But then for you to say, oh, well, it's not championship or bust, when all year you and your team would not shut up about how great you guys were and how you were going to win the championship and blah, blah, blah. And then you consistently just don't show up at all when it matters the most. I mean, they just rolled over, and Kawhi is included in that. I mean, they just didn't want it as much as the Nuggets, plain and simple. And I would have respected Paul George way more if he just went up there and said, we just didn't want it. We just screwed up. We're going to be back again next year. But instead, for you to make excuses like you always do, Paul George, and say, oh, well, we just didn't really want it that much. We'll be back again next year, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't be talking so much crap to Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, to everybody, to random people on Twitter and Instagram about how great you are, how you're going to win the championship. And then when you lose, to say, oh, well, we weren't even going to try to win the championship this year. Okay. It's not one or the other. And I'm done with them. I'm happy they lost, quite frankly. And they're just clowns. Every one of them is a clown, in my opinion. And I'm happy they lost the series. I feel bad for Doc Rivers because I feel like he just was like trying to get them to care more, but they just quite frankly didn't care. They didn't care. They thought they would just be able to skate by to the championship because they had Kawhi Leonard and he has won a couple championships. But instead, a Denver team that quite frankly just wanted it more and is more of a team, which I think is really important. That's why they won the series. But yeah, Paul George, I'm done with him.
Yeah. Another thing we didn't really touch up on the Nuggets is the addition of Gary Harris back in the lineup. He's been a spark plug both offensively and defensively. I know he had a couple games where he didn't shoot the best, but having him back on the team, I mean, this is a guy that is he's not going to be no one's going to call him a superstar. No one's giving him a max deal, but he's a very solid starting lineup piece / role player, a guy that I enjoy watching a lot because he's a Michigan State alum and was very good there. I love his gameplay, and I thought he played an important role for the Nuggets and will in the next round, which we could probably start previewing right now if you want.
I agree with you, Gary Harris. I just want to say one more thing about the Clippers, and I'll be done. I don't know if you saw the report that said that they apparently were like, oh, well, we were fatigued in Game 7, so we couldn't play that much. Why the heck were they load managing for the entire season for the playoffs and then say, yeah, we were kind of tired in the playoffs? They were load whatever. I'll be honest, I'm glad they lost. I'll be quite frank. I think Denver deserved it more than they did because Clippers quite frankly didn't want it. And it'll be interesting to see if Doc Rivers keeps his job and if they make any big moves here. But yeah, I'm happy they lost, quite frankly, because I don't think they deserved it. And I'm a lot more excited to see Denver, a team like them, in it than the Clippers. But yeah, we'll jump in here to the conference finals between the Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. Going to be a really entertaining series, I think, at least. I know some people are thinking it's very similar to last year's Western Conference Finals between the Warriors and the Blazers, where the Warriors just kind of destroyed the Blazers. But I think it's going to be a close series. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the big key here the Lakers are much better rested. It's a very similar situation to the other side. They're much more rested team. I mean, the Nuggets have gone to 7 both series, have had to grind out victories. Their starters have been playing big minutes, while the Lakers have had kind of been able to sit back. I know they've been playing big minutes. Obviously, it's the playoffs. All your starters are playing most of the game, but they've kind of been able to sit back and coast to these series elimination games for the other their opponent or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of
Yes.
a fatigue difference here. I think the Nuggets are good enough to win a couple games of the series. So my prediction right up front is gonna be 4-2 Lakers, and they get into the finals. But I think it's gonna be a very good series. So I think all games are gonna be close. I'm extremely excited to watch and see if the Nuggets can get it done. If they can get it done, I will be very happy. I'm rooting for the Nuggets. I just don't expect them to win this series.
Yeah. In the Lakers, they have more top end talent, obviously, with LeBron and AD. And they even like Alex Caruso has looked pretty good. JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, they've been pretty decent. They play really good defensively. We already know LeBron is, what, 3-time champion, been to the finals 15,000 times. Uh, he's a really, really good player. And I think they're going to be good offensively and defensively. And that's why I'm picking the Nuggets to win the series in 7 games.
Oh wow.
Because I don't know. I just think Denver, seeing that Jokic and Murray interview after the game 7 just brought a smile to my face, because you could just tell how happy they were that they won the series. And then they like walked off. They like had the camera on them as they were walking out to the locker room. They looked like in a movie, you just blow something up and like the cool guys walk off. Like that's what they looked like together. Like they were just mucking it up. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just buying this team. I've always thought they had the talent to go far. They just never were able to put it together. And I think they've proven here that they're the first team ever in NBA history to overcome 3-1 deficits. They have the talent. They have the heart. I think Jokic is going to be able to match what Anthony Davis does. And I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are very comparable players to LeBron, in my opinion. Obviously, LeBron's better, but they're very kind of similar style players. The Nuggets were able to contain 2 of those. I think they're going to do enough to contain LeBron, and then you're going to have to rely on your Kyle Kuzmas, your Alex Carusos, those guys to carry you to games. And I feel a lot better with the Nuggets secondary options outside of Murray and Jokic, with Grant, with Torrey Craig, with Gary Harris, Paul Millsap, Michael Porter. I think those guys can win them some games, and I think it's going to be a really entertaining series. It starts, I think, tomorrow, Friday night, tomorrow, the day we're recording. And I think it's going to be a really entertaining series, and I think the Nuggets are going to do enough to win in 7 games. The rest is definitely a factor, I think, but I think they do have a little bit of a break here, which is really going to help them out.
Yeah, that's a good point. They did get a couple days off before the series. It's well deserved for the Nuggets. With the Lakers, a big reason why I do have them winning the series, and like I said, I said 4-2, but I could easily see this game being in your favor. With on the other side, I think it's a variety of different outcomes possible. The reason though I'm going to take the Lakers is they have really upped their 3-point. They're shooting 36% from 3 in the playoffs, and they really struggled throughout the season. And the initial bubble games, they were throwing up bricks every single game. But they've had some decent contributions from a guy like Kentavious Caldwell Pope, Kyle Kuzma knocking an occasional 3 down. Even Rajon Rondo apparently is the second couple.
Yeah.
Steph Curry in Game 3 had 22 points, hit 3 3.
Danny Green too's been okay.
He's also been a little bit better as well. I think if one of those guys can step up and deliver a couple of bigger games, maybe a 15 to 20 points with some a good field goal percentage, that the Lakers will be able to win this series. So obviously, AD and LeBron, a majority of the series, are going to carry them and keep them / win them games in this series. I think a couple games is going to come down to whether or not a player on the Lakers other than those 2 can step up, and I think someone's going to deliver. I'm going to predict Kuzma has an all right series, averages maybe 12 a game, shoots 45% from 3, but has a couple of big games where he shoots around 18 to 20 points. I think that's what's going to be the difference. I think he's going to have a couple big games and get it done for him.
Honestly though, who's going to guard Murray though? We saw what he did against an elite defender like Patrick Beverley. And of course, Beverley was able to kind of contain him there for the first part of the series. But then as we saw, as the series went on, Murray went off. Do you throw LeBron on him? And then you leave Michael Porter Jr. open. You leave, like I said, I like the other options that Denver has. And then in terms of guards, Alex Caruso. I guess he's feisty, but I don't know. And Rajon Rondo, I know he used to be a really good defensive player, but he really isn't anymore. that concerns me for the Lakers, in my opinion. And I just the potential is definitely there for the Nuggets, and I feel like we've been constantly saying it for the last 3 years. It feels like that they're the next team. They're the next team. They're the next team. And I think they're finally living up to that potential. As we saw, they came back, won 2 series they had no business winning, and I think they're going to do it again here. I think they're going to make it to the NBA Finals. I mean, it's 2020. Like, it's only fitting that the Denver Nuggets are making it to the NBA Finals. So I think the first time in franchise history we might see a Nuggets Heat Finals. Like, what? Who predicted that at the beginning of the year?
No, absolutely no one predicted that. And I'm kind of glad you went with the Nuggets here because we've been pretty much on the same page throughout our playoff predictions. And I'm very happy we're on opposite sides here. I mean, obviously, I am also rooting for the Nuggets in this series. I mean, I respect LeBron. I'm not a LeBron hater. But, you know, you don't want to see – I mean, it's so chalk to see the Lakers get in. I want to see Nuggets Heat because it's just a random matchup that is going to be fun to watch. And I would love to see someone step up in the finals that hasn't really gotten that spotlight because obviously LeBron's probably going to be the best player. Will most likely be the best player in any against either team, the Celtics or the Heat. If he makes
it might not be great for ratings because like Denver or Nuggets Heat is more like a Thursday night game in the middle of January on NBA TV that you might flip on when you have nothing else to do. So it's a little weird to see those two teams in the finals together, but at the same time, it'd be really entertaining. It'd be two contrasting styles of play. I don't know why I'm previewing this potential NBA Finals matchup. I mean, it's very, very likely the Lakers come out here and smack the Nuggets. So I don't really know why I'm like, Nuggets, Miami, and it's realistic. Boston beats Miami too, so I don't know why. I don't know why I'm previewing it, but it'd be. I think I really like all 4 of these teams. I don't really like the Lakers that much, I'll be honest, but I feel like these 4 teams have been the clear-cut best teams in the bubble and wanted it the most, and I think they're all deserving. Because sometimes I know you're a Blazers fan, and I hate to say this to you, but sometimes you have a team sneak into the conference finals, and you're kind of just like, they really deserve to be there. And that's kind of how it was last year. I feel like these 4 teams, even though both the Bucks and the Raptors lost and they were technically the higher seeds, I think these 4 teams have been the best teams in the bubble. So I think they're well deserving of their spots, which is good to see. Any other thoughts on this series?
No, I'm extremely excited to watch it. I'm going to be tuning in. I mean, I know football's in full swing right now, and obviously we're also a football podcast. So we're going to be very tuned into that. But I mean, playoff basketball, there's nothing better than that. You know, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, and it'll be something crazy though if the Nuggets. I'm definitely gonna buy a Nikola Jokic jersey. I'll be honest. I've always wanted to get. I've been like, I don't know why. I just love watching Jokic play, just because he's so different. You know, he's such a bigger guy. He's also got a nice cut. He made some sweet like full court passes. I don't know if you saw at the end of Game 7, he had that one like behind the back. It was like,
it was incredible. Like 30 seconds.
Everyone was like, what's going on? It was insane. I just love watching him play. Jamal Murray, when he's going, he is someone to watch as well. I really hope the Nuggets pull off the upset. I think it'd be awesome. It'd be cool to see the Lakers. Obviously, with the passing of Kobe earlier this season, it'd be cool to see the Lakers win it all too. But 4 great teams, great stories, and I'm really looking forward, like you, to the conference finals and the NBA finals too. I think it's gonna be really, really entertaining to watch. But unless you have any other final thoughts, that's it for this episode. Be sure you subscribe to our YouTube and follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod. Search it on the Apple Podcast. Also, be sure to drop a comment there down below. Am I crazy for thinking the Nuggets are going to be really good? Are we crazy for thinking the Heat are going to beat the Celtics? And also, I'm curious to see what everyone thinks about the Clippers. Are you happy they're out, or are you kind of disappointed we don't see the battle for LA? Definitely drop a comment down below about all the topics we talked about here in today's episode. And also be sure to check out all our other episodes. As Chris mentioned a few times, we have a ton of different NFL episodes out there, as well as a few NBA episodes as well. So, but thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.